Hey everybody, welcome back. Today is Saturday. I'm going to be sharing a little bit from my own Enchiridion, my own book of knowledge. These are notes I've taken from like Joseph Campbell and Carl Jung. One of the questions I've always had has been, if someone has never heard of Christ, how can they then be saved? So what I do is I try to study the common themes that are present in every single culture, every single place, every single story, every single myth, and try to find the common denominator that calls out to you and me, and then points to the story in reality, which is Christ. So I'm going to attempt to do that today, and we're going to go into the necessity of darkness and the necessity of leaving the known, and what boon and what benefit that possibly could bring to your own story and to mine. So there's not a lot to look at, but this is my own Enchiridion per se book of knowledge. I know it was written by the sayings of Epiclesias, but I think it's kind of fitting, right? I can picture myself as being Finn the Human from Adventure Time or something. So this actually goes. This is taken, at least this part of it's taken from Hero with a Thousand Faces, and this is Joseph Campbell writing about what it means to be, what it means to see a hero. So typically, the hero starts out at the normal and ventures forth into the supernatural. You start into the unknown. So you start in the normal, the known, then you go to the unknown, into the supernatural, which is exactly what that is. It's the unknown future. Fabulous forces are encountered, and a victory happens. A victory is won. Then the hero returns changed with a boon for his fellow man, not just for himself. The stories where a person is in it for themselves, it's hard to relate to that since we are communal beings. Even on this sociopathic spectrum, you need to watch a story about somebody else, because then at least you can, you know what I mean? Like, you can't be too self-centered if you're even engaging in entertainment, because you're looking at maybe possible ideals, you're looking at maybe ways you could travel, things you can see. And what's really interesting is the stories that hit us that are fictional, they also can make us cry. Like, why is that? These stories that never happened, but the message is still there. So what is that message? Well, it is just that. You go into the unknown. And that's replete in like every story. Like, it's not just that you're going blind into the unknown. You start out with at least equipped with something. You're equipped with what you know, and that's like your past. So you take your past, the knowledge that you have, and you can pick out, well, I shouldn't probably do this and this and this, and you'll take equipment with you. Like, everybody takes stuff in their car that they need, maybe for the day, something like that, and you travel into the unknown, which is traffic. You know the rules. Somebody might not play by them. Somebody might tailgate you. Somebody might run a red light. That's the unknown. It's roughly known, but that's the kind of structure you want to have. Just enough structure where a little bit of tug and play is available. That way you're safe. That way you're not like freaking out that the sky is literally going to fall on you when you leave your doorstep. That's going into the unknown. But how far are we going into the unknown? The really creative acts are represented as those deriving from some sort of dying to the world. And I think that's something like, the deeper you go into the unknown, the deeper you go into unexplored territory, the more you have to leave behind, willfully. Christ describes this as, if something causes you to sin, cut it off and cast it from you. So on this journey that everybody's on, you and me, it's going to constantly cycle back. We do this every day. You're at your house, that's your normal. You go out into the unknown, you come back one day smarter, something like that. But if you don't feel like leaving the safety of your home, well, you're not really going to venture out on anything then. And eventually that's going to be your downfall, because you're in the stagnant normal, the unbearable present, per se. Because time's always moving forward, even if you don't want it to. The clock is ticking, and that's some sort of, that's like the, maybe not even a nihilistic motivation, it's like your mortal motivation. You only have so many heartbeats. That's something to think about. So what are you doing with them right now? So the dying to the world in that aspect that you can see is, you know what? I'm going to sever all comforts, because I know I have to go out to my job, or I know I have to take care of my kids. That way I can continue to have these comforts. It's not only just dying to those, it's like dying to the cares of the world too. So I love bringing Christ in here, because his words just speak to this hero's story, this hero's element that Joseph Campbell writes about. He says you can either serve God or you can serve money. So what is your aim in life? If your ultimate aim is to gain money, if you're going to go out into the unknown to get material wealth, Well, that's something that will literally you'll hold on to and you won't be able to pull it back with you because it doesn't continue. It's material. It's an object. It doesn't continue on the cycle. That's the hero's journey. That's what you and me are supposed to be doing. We continue. We might have to cast that off even. If it's so precious to us that we have to hold on to it, it will stop us at some point. The weight will be too much for us to bear. Or you can serve God, and God is that continual life, that continual, I would say it's more of a fractal, not even a spiral. And spirals up and out, and we know this because we age. Our concerns now are a lot different than when we were 12 or when we were 8. They were a little bit smaller, but as we grow, as we age, they get bigger and bigger. And that's the hero's story as it gets bigger and bigger. And then you have other adventures. You have major life changes. And sometimes you can see these coming. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes they're voluntary. Sometimes they're involuntary. It's good to theory craft about the involuntary ones, like the death of a family member, something like that. What would you do in this case? Because otherwise you're shell-shocked, and then you can't do anything. The perilous journey turns from one of discovery to rediscovery. The power sought and dangerously won had been in the heart the whole time. So Harry Potter's a good example of this. Now, you can go a couple ways with Harry Potter, barring the magic. And by the way, magic is dark because you can't see it. So if it's just an ability or a tool, you can look at it like that. But Harry Potter, just like all the good stories where it's like kids, Stranger Things is another good example of this. The power that they have, it's always there. It just needs to be discovered. It needs to be aged. But then it's not really a discovery, then it's a rediscovery. Because you were always that. When you look at your child is a potential adult. Maybe, sort of, but they are a human. They're not a potential human. They are all of that. So they are also their past and their potential future at the same time. Like that whole human being is one story. Because one of the reasons that like the pro-life, pro-choice argument is so fierce, it's because you're arguing at conception that story didn't begin yet. Therefore, it's like something else. And this is also something we can glean when we are thinking or looking at people who are like major figureheads in our eyes, people that impress us. They are just like you and me. Like I had the opportunity to break a couple bricks on fire before. That was awesome. I didn't think that was me when I was like 15. I watched it happen by people that were way better than me. And now I can do something like that. So where'd that come from? Did I hit the ideal? I'm still the same person. Or is there a continuous journey even beyond that? Maybe I can get even better. And when it talks about the heart, it being in the heart the whole time, that's like the essence and agency in growth. Sometimes you need the filter of the mind, or you need the control of the mind to discipline yourself to get a certain direction. Like lifting weights and doing push-ups is kind of a good example that's built in, right? I can do 100 push-ups now. Was that always me? Or was that potential always there? Well, absolutely. It's in you too, I would argue, barring disfigurement and all that kind of stuff. The potential is there. It can happen. You just got to do it and put the work in. You have to make it happen if that's the direction you want to go. Now, why would you want to do that? Usually there's some sort of a motivational factor. For myself, to be honest, for push-ups, I want to make sure I can do more than my students. If I don't, shame on me. If kids are doing more push-ups than me, I mean, that'd be a how would I recover from that? Jeez. So you could look at that as like a rediscovery of something that's always really been there. It's just potential that need to be drawn out or extracted out. And that's where you get, that's another overlap of like the creation story, right? Genesis, the Spirit's hovering over the water and God said, let there be. He extracted out something. He told reality to take shape. And the only way you can make something out of nothing is to have a difference between the two. There has to be something different than, like something other than God. Otherwise, everything is all God, and it doesn't matter what you do because we all return to the normal anyway. That's something I can't really ascribe to. I can't ascribe to that because I can't look at a child and say it doesn't matter how I treat you or teach you. We're all going to be one anyway. Like, it gets rid of accountability. It gets rid of your person, the person you're in charge of, the duty you have to yourself. If we're all just everything anyway. I cannot, it's very tough to me to be a person in a story and say my story doesn't matter. It's kind of nihilism on both ends. The great deed of the supreme hero is to come to the knowledge of unity in multiplicity and then make it known. So the hero is the one that, goes down into the unknown, the terrible wilderness, the hunter, right, comes back with something greater, gives it to his fellow man. So that's like a mild hero. The supreme hero is one who opens the people's eyes, that makes him see everything in it. He makes other people see everything in like a new context, Right? Christ obviously did this. Moses did this as well, seeing things in a new context. I know I did one on Princess Mononoke before. Ashitaka is uniting people to live together, regardless. Like, not to live in hate. Just throw that away and figure something out. That's the common denominator. I'm trying to find one in Frozen, but I just can't do it. But it's like the sharing of the common factor, the sharing of something, of the uniting factor that brings you together. But the problem with that is, as a hero, as one who stands out, you're sticking your neck out. You put yourself at risk, even as making that common theme in the multiplicity known. That's also going into the unknown. How is the mob going to act? How is the mass going to receive your message? Are they going to take time to understand it? If so, maybe you should appeal to individuals instead of just a giant mass. It was the mob that told Pilate to crucify Christ, not an individual. It might have been an individual in the onset, but it was the power of the mob that got pushed that direction. But at the same time, that was toward the ultimatum that, Christ was trying to open people's eyes and show that we are paired beyond death, which is the ultimate unknown, by the way. The adventure is always and everywhere a passage beyond the veil of the known into the unknown. So this hits a couple of fields. Obviously, the Christian narrative is Christ goes into the unknown, that is death, comes back, and say we are now paired with him in that. So that's our faith. That's what can happen. In the karmic cycle, it's roughly Krishna, and it's coming back again as something else. And ideally, you want to ascend to heavenhood and just stay up there. In Buddhism, you want to escape. That's the idea. And you want to completely eliminate yourself from the realm of the known into the unknown. And that's oblivion. That's kind of an interesting way to look at it. But that's where you want to go. And then you want to come back and bring that message to other people, which is an impossible message to convey per Buddha himself. Now, I guess in the Muslim faith, it would be the jihad per se. Not necessarily the conflict in the battle, but engaging in dialogue. That's another way you can look at it. But contending for your own belief against beliefs that are not your own. That could be one way of looking at it in the Muslim faith. So that's a journey from the known into the unknown from a spiritual perspective, from an apologetic perspective. But it's interesting that he said it's the veil of the known. Because that is kind of what it is. We can't know everything. We're very finite. We're here for a little bit of time. So compared to all of time and all of things everywhere, even in the universe, we have this very little snippet of what we think reality is. Or what we can, use our best evidence to glean some truth from the world we're living in, something like that. And the Indians, from India, Hindis, have a word for this. It's called Maya. And Maya is the illusion that covers everything, telling you that everything is okay. And we're pretty good at that in America. We tell ourselves quite often that people are pretty all the time, put the elderly over here, live for the now, follow your heart. It's all about the beauty of the immediate right here. And it forgets the other ends. It forgets the beginnings, and it forgets the messy beginnings, and it forgets the ultimate ends and demises. So that is kind of like an illusion. It's an illusion of materialism. It's the illusion of the gratification of the immediate. And that's scary outside those walls. Like, if you have to leave your comfort zone and to deal with the stuff like that. Like, when I talk to people at work about death, it's not directly met with conversation. Now, I don't just walk up to somebody and be like, hey, you're going to die. I mean, why not? That seems like a great way to start a conversation, I guess. But, I try to lead up to that. Because if you don't establish a relationship with somebody, good luck talking with them. Like, even hello. That's a great way to start instead of, asking them the God question. Although I do eventually lead to that, because I think that's probably the biggest thing we're talking about. I can't imagine something greater. Besides the ultimate transcendent, the ultimate potential of transcendence, and life beyond us closing our eyes and our heart stopping. That seems worthy of thinking about. At the very least, if not acting out how maybe the generations coming after you might live as well, just for life's sake, or for consciousness' sake. Something like that, right? But again, it's good if it's a willful adventure. Test yourself, and this is in martial arts, constant practice. We don't fight bare knuckle all the time, we use pads, obviously. But the more you practice, the more you're prepared for the real thing. You get in shape, you train yourself physically, and your muscles and your body will reward you by making you more fit and more ready for potential adventure. Every other analogy works in every other vocation. If you're an artist, you practice drawing till you can draw even better and better. And every time you do that, you got to throw away, the childish way you used to draw, and then you get one more day better. You destroy something that you used to have as a staple. Let the creative element take hold. Copy that pattern and then make yourself better. This is how people learn. We learn in story. We add something else to our story, and eventually our competence level, whatever skill set we're pursuing, gets bigger and better. And through that competence, we are equipping ourselves with known things, more known things, to better deal with the unknown, to better deal with that giant dragon of chaos that's coming for us. The hero whose attachment to the ego is already annihilated passes back and forth across the horizons of the world, in and out of the dragon, as readily as a king through all the rooms of his house, and therein lies his power to save. For his passing and returning demonstrate that through all the contraries of phenomenality, the uncreated imperishable remains, and there is nothing to fear. So this maybe deserves a little bit of explaining. So this is again Freud. You have the id, which is your material sense, your instincts. You have the ego, which rides that and directs it where to go. Then you have the superego, which is like the transcendent pattern of morality, which is what you're trying to follow as the ego. But this is your material sense. You need to drink. You have urges. You need to eat food sometimes. You need to find a place to live. You need to procreate and have kids. So all those are things that are down here that are like, it's like your flesh pulling at you. And the ego is trying to bounce it off the moral code that he knows. Like, this could also be viewed as culture, the superego. So to kill the ego, the attachment to the ego, the attachment to the decision maker, you have to annihilate that. And then you freely go back and forth to whatever is proper. Or rather, you don't annihilate it, you annihilate your attachment to it, as if that's the only place you have to be. But if you step outside that and you look at more of a perspective, more of a time perspective, and this happens a lot to myself if I'm really focusing on what I'm doing with my life. And self-reflection is an examined life. That makes your life more worthy of living when you look at your own life and what direction you are going. Not where you've been, although you can use that as a point of reference, but you look at where you're going and you approve or disapprove of that. Like, do you think you're using all your time to its maximum potential? Do you think you're giving yourself enough breaks? Do you think you're, helping your kids out in school enough? To ask yourself these questions. And if you can articulate the problems you have, you know how to fix them. You just need to articulate them. Sometimes people push that off to the side. And that's like not dealing with your problem. Because if it's over there in the chaos, you don't have to acknowledge it. And that's sitting there in the id. If the transcendent, like, I know where to go. You just sit up here all day. I can think about great things. I think about what other people should be doing. And I can watch the news and judge my president. And I can do all this stuff. But what am I doing with my own life right now? Do you approve of that? And that's the ego attachment. Instead of the ego attempting and that being all that you are, you know what your aim is supposed to be. And you can freely go back and forth. It's like having a very good, distinct moral compass. The other allegorical, context you can get out of this is, Christ absolutely did this. He jumped into that realm after his flesh died. That's the ego itself, per se. Jumped into the realm of the unknown, which is death, and came back and can freely pass between the two. And that is the uncreated imperishable that remains. There's nothing to fear. Fear is a response to the unknown. Fear is anxiety. Fear can also be pain. Fear can be threat of separation. Pain is also threat of separation. You get something stuck through your arm, that hurts. Why does it hurt? Well, you use this hand. You're kind of used to it by now. It might leave you if you leave that, and then you might lose your body because of that. That's fear of separation. Fear of separating yourself from your body. The great unknown is death. That is the big one. It's appointed for men to die, women as well. So what's beyond that? What is imperishable that remains when we're thinking about life? That's when you have to focus on the transcendent. That's when you're looking for a place to put your identity that goes beyond what you can touch and feel and taste. something that's spirit-oriented, something that'll outlast us, something that might even outlast all of humanity. I mean, that's something pretty big to think about. What would outlast that? How would we imprint ourselves on something like that? Well, maybe we can't. Not unless we want to be extremely infamous, but then that's one of the reasons I think man is lost without intervention of the divine. God had to reach down and do something for us. Regardless of what you think that is, that's the only way it can happen. You can't kick the doors down to heaven. Like, explain to me how you do that. That's a works-based faith. Like, as if you can do so much, God's going to bow his knee to you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just so weird. If anyone undertakes the perilous journey into darkness by descending either intentionally or unintentionally into the crooked lanes of his own spiritual labyrinth, he soon finds himself in the landscape of symbolic figures. And I think this is exactly why stories appeal to us so much. You know, stories like Sleeping Beauty. There's a dragon in that story. Well, what's a dragon? It's something so big and so tough, breathes fire. How on earth do you destroy that thing? It's in your way. You can't go on unless you fight that thing. It's a test, otherwise you could go on. And you need to take the test. Or you could run from it, but it's still there. It's something that needs to be dealt with. But it's also a symbol. The dragon is a symbol. The monster that's in front of you is a symbol. If you have an addiction problem, that's your monster. That's your dragon. You need to beat that. And sometimes you can't just punch a dragon in the head. You need help. You need restraint sometimes. Sometimes you need something you can't do yourself. But even to make that call, I know it's something simple, but one of my issues is if I have money or I have my card, I will spend stupid amounts of money on the vending machine. So I leave my wallet at home when I'm already full after I ate my breakfast. I leave my wallet at home, then I go to work. It saves me so much money, and my wife is happier because of it. And that's my dragon, dude. I was raised on sweets. So that's something I'm just going to have to probably fight the rest of my life. Even now, I brought home cupcakes from work. They're for my girls. Shame on me if I eat one. I might eat one, though. But that's what I mean. That's the dragon. So how do you fight that? How do you fight something that sneaks in sometimes through the back door? That's the snake in the Garden of Eden. How do you fight the snake in the garden when you can't even see it? It goes to Eve instead of you. But these are the symbolic figures. Angels are symbolic figures, but they could also be real figures too. One of the stories I always like in the Bible is one of the stories where the children of Israel are complaining a lot after the Exodus, or during the Exodus, I guess. And so what happens is God sends a bunch of snakes to bite them and kill a few of them. And they complain, they call out to Moses, and God says, all right, put a bronze serpent on a stick, put it in the ground, and whenever they look at it, they'll be fine. And they're like, that's symbolic. Why is it symbolic? Because you face your fears. You face the symbol that terrifies you. Now, you might not be able to do it right away, but you practice being braver. And this is diving into your own spiritual issues, because addiction can be a spiritual issue. It so can, because if you're trying to pursue God or something else, but that's not your aim, instead your aim is over here, and it's toward a feeling, which you know is fleeting, your aim is off. And that's sin. Sin literally means to miss the mark. So you hit sin again. But it's a symbol, and you have to call it something. You have to call your addiction something. It's an addiction. Well, that's something. You articulated what your problem is. So what do you do about it? That's an internal struggle you have to overcome. That's part of the journey of the hero. You overcome that in yourself. You come back a better person. You can go talk to others how they can also get rid of their addictions. And give them hits. And you're also like the moon in the darkness. You're giving them light. Giving them hope when they're in a dark spot. Like you can do it too. That kind of thing. And that, as far as I can tell, is the necessity of trial and darkness. Because it's going to happen. It seems like it's necessary for being itself to exist. That's the book of Job. And to have our mettle tested. And to have us to live an authentic story. Darkness is good sometimes for all of us. I'm not going to say it's nice or pleasant. And I know it's coming in my life as well. It's on the horizon for every one of us. There's always a flood coming. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. If you want to see how deep the rabbit hole really goes, click on this video up here that YouTube recommends, and you can join me on an even longer journey. It'll be great.